Welcome back to the second season of the Entrepreneurial Mindset. On today's episode, we have a good friend of mine, someone who's inspired me a lot, and someone that's achieved a lot of accolades and success, Prithvi. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Back when I was in high school, Prithvi was my teacher for biology, and I remember being in the center, and on the promotional poster besides his name, listed all these achievements: 99.95 ATAR, first in the state for bio, fifth in the state for chem, 16th in the state for maths. Now he's a 6th-year medical student at UNSW. He's a small business owner, and he's a YouTuber and content creator. I mean, I just gave you a good introduction there, but for those listening, maybe introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Prithvi. I'm currently in my 6th year of medicine, so I'm finishing off in a couple of months, which is pretty exciting for me. I'm pretty interested in sport, very interested in YouTubing, creative work, so anything involving content creation is something that I've been really getting into recently, and I think you've done the rest, so thank you for gassing me up.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you only got into like YouTube and content creation during lockdown, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of a creative outlet for myself.
Yeah. Did you always have that creative outlet, or?
No, I actually didn't. It was very much a binary of fitness and studying. And I wanted to kind of branch out and think about social impact and also think about storytelling and creative work for myself. Yeah. So that's what led me to YouTubing and podcasting as well.
Did you have anyone you watched? You were inspired by?
Quite a few people, actually. So I'm sure everyone knows Ali Abdaal, the productivity master. So he was really good. But I also wanted to follow YouTubers that captured the reality of life and, you know, the struggle of exams, balancing. And there's a YouTuber called That Medic that I watch. He does like travel videos as well. And that gives me free happiness watching him. So I wanted to kind of do my own storytelling of my life and create accountability and goals with that.
Kind of replicate that.
Yeah,
that's good. I mean, I've loved watching your videos on your channel.
And I'm very excited to watch the other episodes of this podcast, given that you guys have, you know, such an all-star team that if I was in Year 12, I would definitely want to listen to.
Yeah, of course. I mean, speaking of Year 12, let's take it back to the beginning, where it all started, kind of, essentially. Talk about your work ethic in high school. You know, you achieved a 99.95 ATAR, and you don't do that without having a good work ethic. So how were you able to achieve this ATAR? And as well as your state rankings.
I think just to give the audience a bit of perspective, I wasn't always driven at all. Like I did very average in the Year 6 selective school exam. I barely scraped it, made it into a part selective school. And I was a very average student, getting C's all the way until Year 10. And I think what changed was during Year 10 time, I was very interested in science. And I was looking at all the different applications of science that there are in society. And I was very drawn to the concept of becoming a doctor and all the opportunities and diversity that being a physician or surgeon had. So my goal from Year 10 to 12 had nothing to do with ATAR, which is usually what students, you know, gear their goals towards, ATAR or even uni course. Mine was job. Yeah. And I wanted to do anything I could to get to that spot. So I guess one of the first big things was, in order to help my work ethic, I had a bigger vision beyond an ATAR and a university course. Yeah. So that was super helpful.
I mean, not a lot of students in Year 10 even have that lesson.
Yeah, and I also think it's completely fine not to have something like that, because when you're so young, you're not sure what career you want to do, and I don't think it's normal for every student to already idealize one single profession. But for me, I was fortunate enough to have that bigger vision, and that was a huge drive to get me to do work on the days where I really didn't feel like it.
What drew you to medicine? What drew you to having that vision of being a doctor?
You know, I remember in Year 10, I was outside of school, I would just open up an encyclopedia of science, look at atoms, quantum physics, biology, and just literally do my own notes. And I really found that so interesting, just that endless search of knowledge, understanding the human body, understanding the universe. And so it was all about concentrating all of that energy that I had towards science, towards kind of an intersection with humanity, which is what medicine is, right? It's not just a pure science. It's a lot of interaction with patients. Every day is different. You don't know what comes in that door. And that was very exciting for me.
Interesting. I feel like for a lot of people, like hearing what comes through that hospital door is like overwhelming for me, you know, like what happens if I'm not ready for that situation?
Yeah, and I think that challenge is what makes the career so exciting, that, you know, you can never be fully ready, and it's that constant challenge where it's not too overwhelming, but it's just challenging enough that you constantly improve, and the output is you give back to society, which I think is one of the greatest sense of purpose you can have.
Yeah, fair enough. So in Year 11 and 12, you kind of made a a work schedule?
Yeah, so year 11 was the first year I started putting effort in high school.
Yeah.
And it was a good test because it showed me, even though I put in a lot of hard work, I didn't come first in science even, which is very confronting to me. So I guess year 11 really showed me that it's not just all about hard work. It's all about playing the system towards your strengths and breaking down the larger goal, which is an ATAR. I think the ATAR or year 12 is a huge marathon. And I think it's not about, hard work every single day and motivation at all, which is what people think. Yeah. I burnt out. There were days where I didn't feel like doing any work.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, did you ever experience burnout?
Yeah, and we'll come to that. Yeah. So for me, it was all about how do I break this huge goal of becoming a doctor down into smaller steps, into everyday actionable items. So what I actually did was I thought, okay, what ATAR do I need to become a doctor? And unfortunately, it was 99.6 or above. And I did not think I could get that at that time. And then I went and used those reverse ATAR calculators. And I thought, what subject marks do I need to get that ATAR? And I kind of forecasted it. And then I asked my teachers, what rank last year got that subject mark? So if I wanted to get 97 in science or biology, I need to be rank 1. I find that out. And so then my goal throughout the entire year was, how do I get that rank 1? And so it's all about what mark do I need in my next assessment task, what's the weighting, and I'd break it down in that way. And so now what I did was I broke down this huge mountain, which is ATAR, which is so fluffy for students, into every day, every week actionable items. And I think that helped in reaching the vision a ton.
Okay. I mean, did you have a study life balance? Did you have a social life? Were you able to see?
Yeah, look, you have to.
Because it sounds like every day you just have these things to tick off.
Yeah, look, it was a compromise, but the way I saw it was I have my whole life to have fun. And I was only 16, 17 in year 12. I would hang out with friends. I just wouldn't go to, all the late night parties and where I wouldn't wake up the next day on time, that kind of situation. But I did hang out with friends a ton, and I did have a really good social life in year 12. And I'm very thankful for that balance because that actually protects you from burnout. I guess when you foster all your energy towards one single goal, you're more prone to getting burnout. Whereas if you kind of break your energy into multiple things like social life, creativity, sport, and studying, you kind of protect yourself from kind of getting overwhelmed by one single task.
Well, I was going to ask you, did you do any extracurricular activities, so like sports or?
Yeah, I did basketball. But then, in year 11, I had this very ambitious goal of being, a NBA? Semi-pro basketball player. Very quickly fell out the window. But I remember I was really contending, do I want to be a doctor or do I want to, struggle to make a living and maybe try basketball and just give it all in? I think in year 12, I decided no chance.
Why?
I guess statistically, there was minimal chance I would become even semi-pro basketball. So I thought, how about I make this a creative, so a sports endeavor? And so I kind of did that on the side. I played regional level basketball in year 11, and then I kind of simmered down in year 12 and took it more like a therapy session where every day I was overwhelmed. I'd just shoot a few hoops, take some time to myself. And I think that was very conducive to not burning out.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, even like in your recess and lunches, you would have played basketball? Or you in the library studying?
No, I actually never studied in the library, right?
That's good.
I would play basketball, and the only time I would study during recess and lunch is if friends came to me asking for help. I found teaching my peers, even though it seems like, you improve the competition, which is not what you want to do, it actually improves your own understanding of a concept. And,
that helps,
it was... Later on, I guess I discovered teaching was one of my hugest passions, which I guess we'll discuss soon.
Yeah. Well, so you said you prevented yourself from burning out by like breaking down your tasks into achievable goals?
Yeah.
That's good.
I guess a few other very high-level things that I did was I really found my motivation. And for me, I guess it's different for everyone. Some people like to compete with themselves. I like to compete with other people. So my goal, what I kind of did was... I tried to reinforce discipline in my work rather than motivation, because motivation is really transient and it's not a good wave to ride if you want to run a marathon like the HSC. So I did a few weird things. I put the HSC countdown. You guys know that website which ticks by the second the days to your HSC exam? I made a bookmark that as my homepage. So every time I went on the internet, it stressed me out and I had to, instead of YouTube, I'd actually get to work.
Oh, wow.
And a few other things I did was I bookmarked websites which had, medical students and their ATARs and their ranks. And my goal was to beat those students who'd graduated and gone into medicine. So a lot of them got 99.95, first in the state, James Roos. And I guess I just had to recalibrate my competition to those kinds of students, because those are the students that end up getting in those courses, not a semi-selective school average kid. So I really had to find my competition and my drive for that, which was also very important for me. Yeah.
That's interesting. I feel like I never thought of that in high school. Like, I was more focused on competing with the peers than really competing with the top of the top.
Yeah, I was very keen on helping my peers and lifting them up, and rather than competing with the top school or the top students in the state. Yeah.
I mean, they say like if you can teach it, like I found teaching, if I wanted to understand something, I'd be like to my friends, can I just teach it to you? Can I just explain it to you? And maybe that'll help me as well.
Exactly.
And it did.
It improves your articulation as well. And I guess the final two things that I really did to really help with my ATAR was I focused on output rather than input. I think a lot of students, I get this question so many times, which is, how many hours do I study a day? I think that's the most redundant question you could ask, because someone could study 2 hours and get 2 times as much work done as a student that does 4 hours. So I shifted my work towards project-based tasks. So every day, what are 3 actionable output-based items I could do, like complete 1 past paper. That is an output that you can actually focus on, rather than I'm going to study 5 hours of biology. So I kind of switched it that way as well. And I think everyone knows this, but past papers. And I guess the difference for me was I really made sure that I never made the same mistake again. That was my mantra whenever I did a past paper. I don't care how many mistakes I made, never make it again. And I guess before my exams, well, everyone was looking at their 40 pages of notes, before the HSC, before they're going to the hall, and everyone's stressed out. I was just looking at palm cards, not even of notes, but the mistakes I made throughout the year. And the goal was, do not make that in that exam hall. And I guess those final 2 points were really actionable things that I did that I think really boosted my chances of getting my goal course.
Where did you get these ideas of like focusing on output rather than input when everyone was focusing on input? Or like, did you have a mentor or?
I did. So this is I think mentors are so important. I think, this whole podcast and other episodes kind of give students an opportunity to get that mentorship from other very successful people. For me, it was, again, YouTube. Ali Abdal, etc. I really loved all of that. And I guess another point was I had a teacher myself who was in his 6th year of medical school at UNSW. He went to my high school and he loved teaching, and you could see the passion in what he taught, and you could see the passion in his degree and his course, and it gave me someone that I could project who I wanted to be in the future. And I think that was so important for me as well.
That's good, yeah, because I was just thinking, like, how did you think of these ideas, to move away from the norm?
Kind of wanted to be like him. That was simple goal.
And I'm sure there's someone listening that now wants to be like you and now is going to implement these steps.
Exactly. I would love, like, my happiest thing would be to mentor other students and to kind of get them where they want to be in terms of their work and career life as well.
For sure. I mean, this leads to the next question I had, which was like, if you were to look back on a year 11 version of yourself and you're like, what would be the key things you would tell like a younger version of yourself, or key tactics, basically, like in a short sentence, like do this and this can be the outcome that you want? I mean, we touched on it a lot during that conversation, but
I guess if I could summarize it, it would be vision and action. When it comes to vision, when you're in year 11, start thinking bigger than university course. Right? Because a lot of people do university course and then get into a dead end in terms of their job, or they pick a job they don't like. So have a vision towards a career or a field that you want to work in, and then work backwards and break it down. And the second point, which is action, which is it's not all about hard work, right? There are definitely people that worked harder than me. It's about working as efficiently as possible, tracking your progress, and when you see that you're deviating from your expected growth, optimize it or make change. So vision and action would be the 2 most important things.
That's so important. I feel like not even for high school, like you can apply that to anything you want to do.
Yeah, they're quite universal principles that I think I learnt from year 12.
I wish I knew this in year 11. So like instead of working backwards, instead of working forwards, a lot of people like think, okay, I'm going to do this, then this, then this.
It's very hard.
Do it the other way around. Oh, that's so true. So then moving on to that, from high school, then like you mentioned, career in medicine you wanted to do, and you are doing.
Yep.
So you decided to pursue a career in medicine.
Yep.
And your main motivations were the fact that you were very intrigued. And
Yeah, so there's quite a few different motivations. And I think everyone might be thinking, well, this is an ethnic kid, medicine. Surely the parents pushed this guy, right? He's just speaking or copying what they told him. But my parents never once pushed me to even the healthcare field. In fact, they tried to get me to work at McDonald's and KFC when I was in high school. And I had to tell them, no, I want to do medicine. Weird story. I got rejected from McDonald's. That's another story. But yeah, that was very interesting. But anyway,
better, I guess.
Yeah. Coming back to this, I guess I was very interested in science, the outside world, the universe, quantum physics, and the human body. Those are the three most important pieces of science that I was so intrigued by. And I wanted to devote my life towards learning and understanding that. And I got a lot of enjoyment from learning, understanding, and teaching those principles. And I also thought about how can I apply this in a way that has an output to humanity. And so medicine instinctively became a very interesting option, because every day you see patients and you see the translation of science to everyday health and humanity. When you give medications or you perform a surgical procedure, you use the science of anatomy, physiology, and you see the actual humanity effect where you save a daughter or a mother from a terminal cancer or an illness. I think that was so rewarding, and I wanted to work in that field where I was using science and I saw its implication every day, which I think research is great for, but you don't see that immediate translation. So I was a bit selfish. I wanted dopamine hits from the work I did.
Yeah.
And I guess the second most important thing was teaching. I love teaching. I wanted to do something where I would always have the opportunity to teach. And I guess teaching solely by itself, you can't see the application or the output of your knowledge, as per the first point I mentioned. But when you do medicine, you're always teaching medical students when you're a junior doctor. You're teaching junior doctors when you're a consultant. You're teaching entire universities when you're a professor.
Yes.
And I guess my goal was I envisioned myself as, a 70-year-old old man who's finished, doing surgery or medicine and just teaching and being that teacher that really pivots a student's knowledge and interest in the field in medicine.
Yeah.
So I think that was the reasons why I got into the field.
Did you ever do work experience before, like in high school? A lot of students do work experience.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not get that opportunity to do
Yeah.
work experience. Yeah, so it was quite interesting that I thought of all this even before I
Yeah.
had any direct experience working at a hospital. I would definitely encourage people to do that, though, in
Yeah.
retrospect. I think that was just a lazy effect on my end of not doing work experience.
I mean, it turned out fine, to be honest, but
Yeah.
was there any, I was going to ask, has there been any times where you thought maybe a doctor wasn't for you?
Quite recently, in
your
fact, after, going through right now, for the past 2
placements?
years, I've been doing rotations in
Yes.
hospital in
Yes.
different specialties, surgery, medicine. And I guess you realize in medicine, usually it requires a devotion of a huge portion of your life, especially something like surgery, where you have to devote everything to that cause. And the exams are extremely tough. And weirdly enough, for spots like neurosurgery, there's only one spot in the entire country. And all the smartest of the smartest are competing to get that. So there's a very high chance that a lot of applicants don't get into that specialty, which is what a lot of students would not be aware of. I didn't know that in Year 12, how competitive it was.
Yeah.
And I thought, would that really be conducive to my happiness if I pick a career where I'm struggling and I maybe never get my goal? And a career where I don't get the time or capacity to do things outside of my career? The freedom to maybe, do a healthcare startup if I wanted to, or maybe work on a charity or take a year off to do volunteer work. You don't get that opportunity when there is a constant progression and race to get to the top. But otherwise, I've never looked back on the decision of medicine. I think it's one of the only things I'm good at.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, then the opposite side from your placements or your working as a in your rotations, was there a moment where you realized, yes, I've made the right choice. This is the career for me?
Yeah. Look, I'm not an emotional person, right? So I don't really cry. But this year has been very, very confronting, but a huge learning curve for me in seeing the humanity and the art of medicine.
Yeah.
So I guess just the other week, I saw a patient pass away in front of my eyes when we were doing CPR, and the daughter came in the room, and, they had to make the decision to cease, life care and support. And there were other times where that had happened, but the doctor had saved the patient's life. And that equally brought tears of, joy and, reward that, you get to work with people. This is not science. This is people at the most vulnerable stage in life, and your goal is to rehabilitate them, bring them back to their family, back to society. And I thought, that's one of the greatest things you can do in serving others using science. So I think for that reason, it's so emotionally confronting but also rewarding.
Yeah.
That I think this is a career I want to do.
Was that like, I couldn't, like, you were still like a student basically?
Yeah.
Was that quite overwhelming experience?
It is, yeah. And, there's been so many other events. I'm just bringing up one that came to the top of my head.
Yeah.
But, you do medical oncology where people get cancer and all of them pass away. But, you get to support them or improve their quality of life when they're nearing the end. And even that is very rewarding because it's not just about bringing people, or keeping them alive, but it's about making sure they're comfortable and taken care of and they maintain their dignity towards the end stages of life as well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of dynamic experiences that I've had.
I can imagine that could be quite like impactful even.
And it matures you. I think that's
Yeah.
another huge thing. You get to constantly reflect on your own humanity and your own life and, how important it is that you seize all those opportunities because you see people who are at the other end
Yeah.
who maybe wish they'd done things differently or wish they'd, etc.
Did you ever watch any medical shows when you were like?
No, now I can't. I'm allergic to them.
Oh, really?
It's so unrealistic. Yeah. So now I see
Okay.
it. The only thing I can do is to pick apart all the things that are wrong.
Wrong
That don't make
with-
sense, right? Like,
This
do you watch
is
a
right.
medical show?
I used to. Like,
Which
there was
ones?
The Good Doctor.
Yeah, the Good Doctor. So that guy, he does heart surgery, brain surgery, every surgery. It's not how it works. You train 40 years to do one specific specialty, whereas he's doing a heart transplant on Monday and a brain surgery on Tuesday, which is very interesting. I'd like to do that, but I think in a lifetime, no human can become an expert of all
Surgeries?
organs in the body.
I mean, I was asking the show question because in those shows, the junior doctors or the students are just placed in, and the senior doctors are like very condescending to them, or like they're just like placed into this and they have to like react on the spot. Was it quite like that?
That does happen in hospital. You get
Yeah.
asked a lot of questions on the spot and you don't know the answers to some
Yeah.
of them. And, sometimes you do get told off. And I guess there is an improving culture in medicine. I'm not condemning the culture. They're improving.
Yeah.
But there are definitely times where there are experiences of bullying that my peers, etc., have faced.
Okay.
And that stuff does happen,
Yeah.
even as a junior doctor with consultants, etc. And moreover, in surgery than medicine, there's this huge, patriarchal culture where the people at the top get to decide and, make really tough working conditions for junior doctors. So that's a lot of... It is, I guess,
How
true to
come
some
it's like
extent.
that? Do they do that on purpose?
Have
or-
you heard of Yumika Kadota? She was a plastic surgeon in Bankstown.
No.
And she had to admit herself in hospital because she worked so many hours. I think her name was Yumiko. Apologies if I got it wrong. But she worked so many hours, more than 100-hour weeks, to the point where her body started to break down. She had to admit herself in hospital and she quit medicine. So that's just a single testament that can show you how intense it can get in the field.
Yeah.
So there is some realism to that.
I feel like it's especially the specializations that you choose, I guess. Especially the
Surgery,
orthopedic.
yes, orthopedics. I think the toughest ones, there's quite a few, but pretty much any surgery, maybe cardiothoracics, for example, is all very tough to get into. And I guess you need to really... A lot of doctors do suck up to the bosses to make sure they increase the odds of getting in the program. So yeah, look, politics is everywhere. We can go on, but I think it's prevalent in business, it's prevalent in any field, but it is also present in medicine.
I mean, earlier we were having a chat before the camera started recording of what specialization you wanted to do.
Yeah.
You mentioned surgery, but you also mentioned you weren't sure.
Yes.
Is there a specialization you're not going to do that you know you're not going to do?
Yes, but I don't want to put down that specialty in any way.
Yeah,
I think
fair
there are
enough.
definitely people who can do that
Yeah.
specialty and do it very well.
Yeah.
It's just for me personally, it doesn't synergize with my strengths and the type of patients I want to see. So I went into medicine wanting to be a pediatrician because I
Yes.
was like, children being sick
Yes.
is the toughest thing to see because they have a whole life ahead of them. And if you even limit their functional capacity at a young age, it transforms their entire life trajectory.
Mm.
But then I went into pediatrics, and I did not realize you can't talk to these people. They're crying. They're babies, right? They're kids. So you have to play detective work. And on top of that, you're not treating one patient, you're treating two. You're treating the parent, who's very protective, sometimes aggressive, which is a defense mechanism. And so it does become very hard to take care of the sick child. You know, you have to really play Sherlock Holmes and look at, you know, he's got a runny nose that could indicate an upper respiratory tract infection, that kind of logic of thought. And I realized that's not for me. So I guess the thing to understand is, in the field of medicine, whatever you start off wanting to do is completely different to what you end up doing. And even still for me, I'm saying surgery, but I'm still completely unsure in the next 5 years where I'll end up, which is exciting for me.
And is it like if you choose a specialization, you can turn back and choose another one, or do you have to?
That's tough. It depends. If you do something like neurosurgery, you can't really go back because you only did the brain, where if you want to do cardiology after, you have to start all over again. Whereas if you do something such as cardiology, you have to first know general health and physician training. So you can go back and do neurology or some other specialty. So I guess the answer is it depends on the specialty.
Fair enough. All right, so the next question I had for you was, would you recommend a career in medicine to anyone in high school listening?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start with the yes part, which is that this is one of the most fulfilling careers you can do. As I mentioned, you're working with very vulnerable people. It's not just science, it's art, humanity, and its intersection with science. And there is a place for everyone in medicine. If you don't like talking to patients, you can be a surgeon, right? The patient's asleep the whole time. Or you can be a radiologist who just looks at scans all day. If you love talking to patients, be a physician. If you want to change the lives of thousands of people, be a public health doctor. So there are just so many places you can go. If you want to work in business, med tech, consulting, right? There are just so many avenues you can take this career. It doesn't have to be the traditional, be a doctor. So I think in that sense, there is a place for everyone. And so it's a very welcoming field in that sense. But I do want to really reinforce, I guess, the general public, the reasons they see medicine as enticing is because of prestige sometimes, and sometimes also due to income. And I think I want to really reinforce this, that you will be working so much harder for a marginal increase in your income compared to the general population. So I think anyone who's doing it for the money is very quickly going to get shot down because of how tough the working conditions are if your metric is money, right? And just to reinforce, any idea, Babe, what a junior doctor makes? What's their base salary?
I would say, from your tone of voice, 30,000.
30,000 is quite on the lower side because they work long hours.
Junior doctor, so they've graduated?
They graduated, yes, after 6 years of studying.
Okay, I thought this was during placement.
No. So they make about, the base is 69,000.
Okay.
Which is not much. If you think about, a commerce student or a business student who goes in consulting, they straight away go in, and some of them, my peers, get 6 figures.
Yeah.
So that's just to really dispel this whole myth about doing medicine for the money, which is what you should not be doing it for.
Yes.
And I guess the thing you also have to realize is it is tough, and it can take a toll out of your life as well, in the sense that, depending on what field you pick, the work-life balance can be very challenging, and it may slow down the progression of other parts of your life, such as getting a house, having a child, etc.
Doing the other things you want to do.
Yeah, but I guess going back to my point, I don't want to put the entire field down. I think medicine is an amazing field to work in.
For those that are in it for the right reasons,
yes,
basically.
Exactly.
I mean, can a student be initially enticed by the money, but then realize there is more to this than money?
Yeah, so this is more of an ethical question, actually. It's, is it the intention that matters or the outcome, right?
Yeah.
If they have wrong intentions, but the outcome is still saving lives and they're good at what they do, all means, go by it.
I'm sure there's some doctors out there.
I know. There's definitely medical students that I'm friends with who are interested in medicine for the financial aspect of things. And I don't think it's any less valid than my intentions, because they will still be working hard and they know they can do a good job and they will be saving lives. So I have no problem with that. It's just, for a person going into medicine, I just want to acknowledge, if money is their driver, it's going to be very tough.
I think that's with everything. You hear that with everything. If you're driven by money, you're not going to achieve the success you want to achieve.
And I think that even applies, given that you guys are about entrepreneurship and discussing that. I think when you shift your goal of entrepreneurship from I want to make money to how can I serve or create a product or service that meets issue in the market or something that
solves a problem.
Yes, solves a problem. I think when you shift it that way, that's when you really start making progress with your idea.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, going into that entrepreneurship, what do you think the future of medicine is? You know, is there any new innovations you've witnessed
Yeah.
that you think would drastically shift how we operate today?
You know, I did a podcast episode on this on
Did you?
my podcast where we looked at. I got two other medical students who had very different ideas to mine, and we just sat down and we had a conversation, and I learned a lot from them. And I guess the big takeaways are, you know, business, tech, they're all on pace with innovations. Especially in, you know, IT, software, computers, technology. Medicine, on the other hand, is 50 years backwards. So there is a hospital in Sydney. I'm not going to name the hospital, but they still do all their medical records with pen and paper.
Oh.
This is 2021 you're talking about,
Yeah.
where typing is, you know, 30 times faster, gets more detail. Think about the ripple-on effects to healthcare. When you write notes about a patient, you miss details, and that can eventually impact or make errors in healthcare. So when we're that backwards, even something as simple as a coding software or a website interface that can record patient data is a huge improvement.
Yes.
So I think there are so many improvements that can be made in medicine. And I guess a few things that I thought of. I'm very biased because I did biology, and so I'm very interested in the genetics space.
Yeah.
But CRISPR-Cas9. And for those people who don't know what CRISPR-Cas9 is, in a sentence, it's cutting and pasting genes. We now have the capacity to play God, where if we want to have a child who's as fast as Usain Bolt, we can find the genes that are causative, cut and paste that, and potentially change the entire genome or physical characteristics of that child. It is possible. Right now, there's a lot of legal limitations.
Yeah, of course.
But in this lifetime, we are going to get there, which is a problem that a lot of people have to deal with. What are the ethical ramifications of this? You know, what can we do? Can we only use it for disease, or can we, you know, improve physical appearance, intellectual characteristics? How's it going to affect employment, jobs? There's just so many ramifications there.
There was a movie about that called Gattaca.
I've heard.
Yeah, where it's very similar, where you like genetically tweak your offspring. You can tweak it to have physical features or features you want it to have.
Yeah, there's a lot of revolutions in the world. There's you know, the coding revolution, where, you know, the internet, websites, this whole cryptocurrency now, which is changing society. But I think biotech is going to be another huge driver of change for humanity as well. Going into other innovations in medicine, there is a field of medicine with diagnostic testing. And right now in hospital, if I want to test you, I would need to take about 10 ml of your blood. You know, it can be quite painful, use a lot of resources.
Like a normal blood test?
Yeah, even a normal blood test. It's quite invasive, right?
Is.
And imagine doing that on a child who's very sick and needs that done every single day. It's very invasive. I think minimally invasive testing is another very interesting field which can rapidly expand in the future, where maybe we can get, you know, a pinprick of blood.
Yes.
And
Quite
we
like
can
diabetes.
do all the testing to actually diagnose conditions. Yeah, exactly like diabetes. I think that's another area of healthcare. And I think one of the more direct changes that can be made is AI, right? I think anyone working in the AI space right now, coding AI, has the capacity to make huge changes outside of their field as well. I think one of those things is in healthcare right now, when you get sick, a doctor asks you a ton of questions, and they use a human brain, which is flawed, has biases, to diagnose you. And sometimes we make mistakes. Commonly we can. If we can somehow find a way for AI to engage in the problem-solving aspects of medicine, right? Add a bunch of symptoms, look at it based on a huge database of patient clinical presentations, and output a diagnosis, it makes the diagnostic aspect of a physician almost redundant, where they just have to supervise what's going to happen and, you know, provide their own physical input. And I don't think that's going to take the job of doctors. What it will do is it will shift doctors to be more human, right? And provide the humane aspect of care, which is counseling the patient, giving them treatment options, you know, providing emotional support. So I think that's a very interesting field that, if done right, can revolutionize healthcare.
I mean, it's kind of already there, but it's not accurate. Like when you're sick or you have something wrong.
And you know, that's something I wanted to work on, but I don't have time. And I was sitting in my exams for fifth year, which were one of the toughest exams I've ever sat. But my friend, who's a coder, brought up this idea with me, and I thought, you know, how cool would it be to at least work on it, or just make some progress, and at least learn how hard it is to create something that impactful. But unfortunately, I haven't had the time. So if any listeners out there, you know,
Wanna
have a friend
idea.
who's a coder and do medicine, maybe you can take up that idea.
I mean, your last innovation that you mentioned, the non-invasive like testing, blood testing. I feel like I want to get like blood test done just to see how my like regular body is functioning and everything. But the main drawback is the fact that I have to go to a center, get the blood drawn.
Yes, get the blood drawn.
Wait 1
all
or 2
of
days.
that. Exactly.
No
And imagine potentially if you had a machine at home where you could simply finger prick your hand and it will tell you all your results about your healthcare and all your internal body physiology. I think that would be amazing.
I think there was
Theranos. Is that what
was that the scam?
Yes, that is why I brought this up as well.
Yes.
So there is a book called Bad Blood, which I recommend everyone read. It's riveting. I usually like fiction, but this is a non-fiction. This is a real life story about, I think Elizabeth Holmes is her name.
Her name.
And she fooled the whole world, reached a $4.5 billion valuation based on this technology that she marketed as what we're talking about, minimally invasive testing, but didn't have any scientific backing.
I think to touch on again, so the Bad Blood book, for those that aren't aware, so Elizabeth Holmes, like Prithvi said, she kind of marketed a device that she said would be non-invasive blood testing, and there was like a black box kind of type thing. No one knew what was inside the box or how it worked, but apparently it worked, and it got a bunch of investors involved. It reached a $4.5 billion evaluation, and it turned out to be a scam.
Exactly. So you know, people like Bill Gates were supporting this technology and startup, but unfortunately it didn't work. So I think someone eventually will find a way. And I guess this is where there is an interface of medicine with science, the crude science. So spectroscopy, all the stuff that Year 12 students are learning. You apply that. Mass spectrometry, infrared. That's what Year 12 students are learning. That is exactly how we measure substrates or substances in blood. So, you know, I'm very happy that I have that knowledge, because now if I want to work on some field like that in the next decade, I have the basic rudimentary terminology and vernacular to talk about those things, understand the problems, and try solving it.
I honestly think that innovation is going to become reality quite soon even. I think even seeing how Elizabeth Holmes failed, I think a lot of people are going to
provides a backbone for a lot of other people to challenge themselves in that field. I think right now, the most immediate change will be AI. And I think after AI and telehealth and all of those things, given the pandemic has changed healthcare entirely, after that will be imaging improvements, where, you know, we can do an imaging investigation which tells you everything about that structure. We don't need to go X-ray, ultrasound, CT, MRI. We can go straight to an imaging technique that provides all the resolution and detail needed to diagnose any structural diseases of the human body.
Is there anything we can't currently image, or we've like separately? So
there's a lot of things that have impairment. So X-rays, for example, they only look at hard structures because that reflects the actual X-ray, right? And so it's very specific to bone, whereas ultrasound only looks at soft tissue.
Like muscles?
Yeah. MRI is very expensive. So we typically don't do that, but it provides all the detail we need. But as you know, healthcare is restrained by economics. And so MRIs can't be ordered for everyone. But eventually, if we can reach an investigation that provides the detail of an MRI at a cheaper price, you know, it'll change healthcare entirely. Because think about all the diseases that are missed because we order a cheaper test. And it delays the diagnosis. It delays patient improvement. And I think after all the imaging improvements as well, then we'll have the CRISPR-Cas9 gene changes. And then finally, I think the improvement in testing would also happen as well.
Do you reckon we're going to witness this all in our lifetime? Or
I hope so. How exciting would
I
that
hope
be?
so. I mean, they sound exciting.
You know, I want to posit this idea to the audience. A few decades ago, to sequence your entire genome and find all the genes that can cause you to be ill or die, you know, to know what's your disease, what's your risk of heart disease, how will you die? To find that information out, it costs tens of thousands of dollars. But it's become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper that now, for a few $100s, you can find your entire genome, have it sequenced in a USB, and go to the GP, plug that in, and they'll tell you all the diseases you're at risk of, all the diseases you can pass on to your child, and even, with accuracy, most likely, the way you might die.
Wow.
And that's going to change healthcare entirely. Yeah. And that's the involvement of genes. So I think when Year 12 students are learning biology, their teachers don't tell them about this stuff. No. So they're thinking, why am I learning about adenine, guanine, cytosine? But when they think this is the changes that is going to, you know, tangibly impact their lives, then they understand why they're learning what they are, which I think needs to be more integrated in our schooling systems.
I remember learning about genes in biology, the unzipping and then the replicating.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. No, that's crazy. I did not know that existed.
It's happening very soon in our lifetime.
I mean, would you want to? Would you want to do that test?
That's the thing. There's a lot of ethical ramifications again. You know, what if you get a diagnosis that there is no treatment for?
Yeah.
Then you just provide stress, anxiety without
know
any
it's
improvement in your health.
Yeah.
And what if you find out something where the entire family now needs to get tested for, and it affects your insurance accessibility, right? It's weird. You know, in Australia, weirdly enough, we need to provide our genetic information for life insurance if we do a test.
Okay,
and that's going to increase your
yes.
life insurance premium. So
Yeah, for sure.
there's a lot of ramifications there.
Would you do it?
I would.
You would do it?
I like knowing information, right? That's why I picked this
But there's
time.
some information like...
I would take the risk for sure. I'm very much a control what you can, whatever you can't control,
You can't control.
let it happen kind of vibe. And so I would definitely do that.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of left me questioning whether I would do it or not.
Exactly. You will have to make that decision in your lifetime.
Yeah. Let's leave that for the future, I guess. Okay, let's shift course to your small business. So you have a tutoring center and an online platform for high school students called edX Learning, HSC.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned before, I first met you when you were my mentor in high school.
Yeah.
And since 2017, you've been mentoring students as well as balancing your medicine degree.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about that balance. You know, I'm sure there's been many sleepless nights where you've been completing an assignment or studying for an exam while simultaneously also marking papers or answering
Look, I think
any questions.
to generally understand this, I guess when you go back to why I even started edX Learning, and it was because especially in the area, I guess, of southwestern Sydney, there isn't any great teaching at an affordable price. And I didn't want students to have to pay a premium to get access to not just great education, but great mentorship.
What would be like the rate that is like charged?
So if you look at, I don't want to name centers, but there are centers that will charge 50, 60 an hour, which I think is insane because parents are barely struggling, especially with pandemic situations. And I think the minimum fee that can keep a center running, but also provide an impact to students would be the equilibrium that we'd want to get to. The reason why edX was started was because I was one of the lucky ones. I was very close to not having a mentor or not having great teaching. And if I didn't have great science teaching, I would never be fascinated in science. I'd never become a physician. I'd never make an impact to society. I feel like there's a lot of Elon Musks. There's a lot of really great minds that get lost in a schooling system or a tutoring space that just provides mass education with the intent of making profit.
Money.
And so my goal was to start teaching and mentoring more so in my own way. Small group classes, personalized, most affordable rate, but give them access to the best teacher who they can look up to as a role model. It doesn't just teach them about school, it teaches them about global problems. Every day, every lesson I posit to my students a global problem. The global population is increasing. How do we solve it? And I get them in that problem-solving mindset. And every time we learn something, I think about explaining to them why they are learning it, capturing that fascination so they kind of take it on, and that pushes them to work harder in their education and have a vision for where they want to be. I think the most rewarding thing is to hear a student say, "Hey, sir, you completely changed my approach to education. Now I want to do this course. I want this career thanks to you, and I've got it." That's the most rewarding thing that I could get. And I hope the rest of my life I get to do that, but in different levels of education. So in medicine and then as a junior doctor as well. Regarding your question about the struggles of a business, I think every business works very hard. The small restaurant down your street, the owner would be working almost as hard as a multinational corporation. It's just they picked a different problem or a idea which they wanted to provide a service for. So even a small business like myself, it's very hard, and I did not anticipate it would be this hard. So it's not, you'd think, he teaches, marks papers per se, but there is so much to providing really great education. There's things I've listed a lot because I was thinking about what do I do, and there's just so much to it. There's resource creation and collation, where I created thousands of pages of booklets on science, sleepless nights, where I didn't even know a student was going to get access to it because I was just working from home, doing that while all my friends were studying medicine. And I felt a lot of FOMO and guilt, because I wasn't doing justice to my career. I was more thinking about year 12 students who maybe I would never teach. There was the whole marketing and social media. I've never done that. I'm not a marketer. I don't sell myself, but I have to somehow engage in, how can I reach these students that I want to help? Because without good marketing, you never reach your target audience. Website creation. Spent months learning how to use Wix and create a website and how to improve the interface and enrollment workflows. Getting an admin staff who can do all the, really hard yards with, invoices, enrollments, all of that. Well, I can focus on what I'm best at, which is mentoring my students. There's a lot of logistical things. Accounting. I don't even know what GST was until a couple months ago, or business activity statements and tax. And now you have to think about all of those factors as well, so you can make sure you can reliably provide a service in the long term. So I think no matter what, I'm very happy because I get to teach a group of students to the point where last year we were teaching almost 100 students, which I would never have been able to do by myself.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I learned so much about what it takes to do a business, which is what I want to eventually work on as well on the side. Some kind of business idea which solves a healthcare problem. That would be my ultimate calling later on in life.
I mean, you had no business background prior to starting this own business, and a lot of our topics here at Generation Entrepreneur is starting your own business, taking the initiative. Were you doubtful of opening your own center?
Yeah,
was there any fears you had?
For sure. You have to rent a place, number one.
Yeah.
I'm still a student, I don't make any money at all. And then on top of that, I have to rent a huge place, get admin, get a team of people who are now looking out for me. I'm looking out for them, making sure that they get taken care of. There's just so much to it. And I remember, to kind of give you all a picture, beginning of this year, first 6 months of this year, I did no studying for medicine. Completely just put it away because I did not have time. I'd be pulling all-nighters, waking up at 3 a.m., or sleeping at 3 a.m., waking up at 6, going to hospital with eye bags double the size, not knowing any questions that I'd get asked.
Yeah.
And then the latter half of this year, I had to really switch base where I had to solely focus to pass my medical school exams. And I ended up doing well because, I have a mentality where I want to do my best and do justice to the career. But this year was a tough year. And I think for everyone wanting to start a business, I think they should realize that there are a lot of steps beyond just business idea and action, but at the same time be very excited to find a team of like-minded people that would join your cause to convert that idea into actuality. And I think the process or journey and the learning in that, especially a startup where you get external funding, which is completely different to a small business, very different. I think there's so much to learn in the process rather than thinking about, I want to be a millionaire, or I want to, exactly make an impact.
Focusing on the process rather than the output.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing my whole life. I think focusing on journeys is what gives you happiness and purpose rather than, what you want to materially have in 20, 30, 40 years.
I mean, you weren't only doing a business and doing a uni course, you were starting that own business, you were teaching in it, as well as doing a medicine degree, which a lot of people just, if they're doing a medicine degree, they only devote their time to the medicine degree. Yes. So did you find that impacted your you said you did well, but was there ever any exams that you didn't do well in? Was where you were okay, this, I need a shift?
I'm very ambitious and competitive. So what I do is I find a way. So I think with my YouTube channel, what I did was I realized, how can I get myself to stay disciplined and do 10 to 12 hour study days? Because that's what it got to. Either I do that or I fail my exam. And I realized if I live stream myself, right, other people get to hold my accountability. Someone watching my live stream is watching me do work. And so I need to keep doing work. Otherwise I look like a loser if I just hop off and play games, right? So what I did was I externalized accountability, and that really helped me. And I ended up doing what I've never studied this much in my life. In the HSC, I was studying maybe 4 hours max a day on a school day. This year I studied 12. I did more than 12 hours on a single day, which I was shook by. And it was just because of putting music, starting a live stream, and thinking of the bigger goal.
I mean, I have subscribed to your YouTube channels, and I get notifications when you upload a video. So I would get a notification around midday that you're starting to do your live stream. And at 9 o'clock at night, I would go on my YouTube and it would still be live.
And I guess we'll talk about this soon, but with my YouTube channel, the goal was never to get, famous or anything like that. It was, how can I storytell? How can I get accountability with my goals? And how can I capture moments that make me happy? And how can I find my tribe of like-minded people who, think similarly to me, who would like to meet me, interact with me, and we could kind of grow together.
Yeah, no, fair enough. How's that feedback been from like students? In
terms of from edX learning?
From just your students or your following, watching your live stream?
Yeah, so I think especially for my students, they've had someone to look up to rather than just learning content from. And so a lot of my students have messaged me, especially in the COVID pandemic, because of online classes, of how much of an impact that I had in keeping them motivated and driven to do work. My students would join my live stream as well. There was times where I'd go on Microsoft Teams, which is what we used to teach, and there'd be up to 60 other students joining the call to also study, which was amazing. And we all got work done together. So I think that was very, very rewarding. So yeah.
Are you at a point now with edX, your business, where it's automated, or are you still quite hands-on?
A lot of things are automated. The things that I am not good at. So marketing, admin, etc. is all automated, and I get to focus on what I do best, which is mentoring and teaching my students and a bit of resource creation. But I think definitely there can be improvements to any business model. But then again, my goal is not to make the most profitable business. In fact, I advise all students, tutoring is not a great business model per se, especially if you're trying to make profit. I think startups or scalable ideas with zero cost of replication and distribution, digital-based products, for example, is the place to go for profit. But for me, like I told you, my passion is teaching. And so this was the most direct applicable thing I could do as a student to still make an impact as a teacher. So I think no matter what, I'm very happy and I'm very proud of what we did in teaching and mentoring students.
Are you looking to expand? Opening a second center? Because currently you have one center and the online platform.
Yeah, I guess the goal now is take it as it goes. So, see how students respond to, how the teaching has been, which has been amazing so far, and go from there. And however students seem fit, I guess we'll take it that way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. I see all the marketing stuff for edX as well. They've been quite popular too, and you have the online platform as well. So.
We do online in center because I also think that your location should not limit you to great education. So if students are in rural Australia, students are really far from our center, they can still get mentoring and education from me and all our resources for the most affordable price that we can give.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I still don't know how you balance all that, because I was just thinking like you and doing placements, coming home and then teaching.
Yeah, teaching, then marking, then website creation, and then admin stuff, and then enrollment workflows and creating timetables. But it was amazing. I would not change a thing. I think it was fun.
Did you fit any extracurricular like gymming or
sleeping? I still made sure, no matter what this year, that I gymmed at least 3-4 times a week. It's my little therapy, it's free therapy. So taking care of my physical health is also a very important thing for me, where if my physical health isn't good, my mental health won't be good. So I made sure I took care of that, and then also trying to do podcasting and YouTubing on the side, which was its own challenge, because it takes 8 hours to edit a single YouTube video for me. And but it's been amazing learning.
And I guess you'll still be learning, you're actively learning even in this field. I mean, building on top of that, so you decided to start your own YouTube channel, Prithvi Santana. On YouTube.
My name.
Your name.
As is.
And you often have the same aim as us, like to educate the younger generation, mentor the younger generation, basically. And you talk about a wide variety of topics like investing, entrepreneurship, finding happiness, what it's like to be a medical student, and like we mentioned before, the study live streams as well. So I want to firstly ask, what were your main motivations behind starting the YouTube channel and creating videos? And your inspirations?
So I think we mentioned earlier, from me watching YouTubers, I learned so many principles for my HSC year, also about life, having fun, and medicine and what it's like. So instead of doing work experience, I'd watch YouTube videos about doctors and their day in their life. And that would give me a bit of perspective on what the field was like. So I think YouTube was always a platform where I learned so much, I got so much enjoyment from. And on top of that, a lot of the YouTubers I was watching really did encourage viewers to share their own story. If they're doing something creative, dynamic, to share their story, show their work, find, the tribe of like-minded people Because, you could probably have like 100 best friends all over, planet Earth, which you just will never be able to meet them, right? But you'd have similar personalities, similar goals. I think YouTube kind of enables you to find people that are like-minded, that are passionate about your cause and connect. And I think that really gives you a lot of happiness. And on top of that, I also wanted to, share my experiences, my travel, capture that so I can look back on it for my happiness as well. Externalize accountability. I will tell people my goals, and I have to hit my goals now because I made an entire YouTube video about what I'm going to accomplish. And in the process, it will really help my personal growth as well. So my reasons for starting YouTube had nothing to do with viewers or subscribers, and I don't really mind about that. It was much more about the journey of creating videos, storytelling, hitting my creative side, externalizing accountability.
Fair enough. I mean, one of the most interesting videos I found of yourself was the Finding Happiness one. You talked about a theory in that. I forgot
Prospect theory.
Prospect theory.
Which is an economic theory.
I mean, explain that
about happiness. Yeah. So I use this theory. It's an economic theory of decision making to understand happiness in my decisions. So prospect theory, it basically states that humans weigh decisions or prospects relative to one another. And one of the principles is we weigh them relative to our status quo. So right now, everything you have, your car, your house, your belongings, your friends, girlfriend may not be, all of that is your status quo. And eventually, it's your neutral point. And what happens is if you lose any of those things, you will get sad because that's a drop to your status quo. Whereas happiness is elicited by gains to that status quo. And basically what prospect theory states is that you should focus ideally on lowering your status quo, number one. So minimizing all that baggage, which is your neutral state. So that could mean, for example, not trying to get, a lot of clothes and cars, etc. Because, if you lose that or it gets damaged, it reduces your happiness. But also, on top of re-anchoring your status quo, it's all about looking at gains to that status quo that are dynamic. And it's things like relationships, experiences, travel, giving back to others that are statistically proven to provide long-term gains, and they take a longer time to be integrated into that status quo compared to buying the new Tesla, right? So my whole life understanding of happiness is I focus on things such as building relationships with others, working on a cause of serving other people, traveling, etc., rather than buying shoes and a nice car, which was what 2017 me was very interested in for happiness.
I remember, yeah. Look, I think on your Instagram.
I got the fanciest shoes still. I just don't wear it.
And I think, the important point was like keeping your bases very low, so that anything above it, you get quite a big gain.
Exactly, and focus on gains that are dynamic rather than static.
Yeah, for sure. And the second video I found really interesting. I mean, all of them are interesting, but was investing. And I wanted to bring up the point of how important do you think investing is for high school students and starting early? Because I didn't understand investing in high school. No one teaches you investing in high school, even though they should really.
100%. I think the schooling system it's good because, I got out of schooling system and I did okay. But I think there are improvements that can be made. And that's, again, why I think Gen Entrepreneur and the Entrepreneurial Mindset podcast is something that I think can change an entire student's life and perspective. So I think what you guys are doing is amazing. For investing, I think the thing that I thought was, why should I worry about saving money as a young person when I'm going to make money in my future as a career? And I think a lot of people have that understanding, and so they spend and splurge. And this is before I understood the power of compound interest, where you make money on the money that you make.
Yes.
That's pretty much the principle. And to the point where, for the audience, if you assume 10% returns in the stock market, which is about average, over a decade, your money doubles, right? And if you imagine putting $100,000, doubling that once, that's 200, doubling it again, 400, 800, 1.6 million already.
In 40 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The power of compound interest is exponential gains.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why investing is important is it takes away money as an issue in your later life. I never want to have to work for money. I never want to have to work paycheck to paycheck. And I want to be able to, if I think of an opportunity, maybe starting a charity, I want to have the capital to be able to change that into reality. I think the thing people need to understand is to get any cause or great idea, into the world, you need money, right? Whether it be a charity, a hospital, whether it be, an orphanage, anything like that. You need to have capital so that other people can join your cause and work towards it. And I guess that's my goal or motivation, to build capital. And that's why I wanted to invest early. So I think all people, all students, especially in year 12, should be looking into investing and investing early. I'm not talking about day trading or crypto, which is I don't know much about at all.
Yeah.
But I guess starting off with understanding what an ETF is,
Yes.
right? Starting off to understand passive investing and starting that game, and then going further based on what they're like.
I think if anyone that's listening that's not in high school, is like 23, 24, you can still start. It's never too
late.
Never
Never too late. Even putting in the smallest amounts a week result in crazy, insane returns in decades from now that your future self will thank you for.
I think an important thing is to realize the fact that without investing, as inflation goes up, your money that you have saved up goes down.
So much. It's crazy. Inflation is 2%, right?
Right now.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe even higher now given the whole...
and you're experiencing it here, like fuel prices and stuff. They're quite expensive now.
Exactly. So I think to maintain your happiness, or to make decisions now that are conducive to your future happiness, investing is one of the most important things you can do.
So for the high school students listening then, what's like a good place to start you recommend?
So if I was me, 17 years old, what I would do is I would smack myself and tell myself to start investing.
Don't buy those shoes. Like the interstellar moment where he's looking back
going through the light. I really wish. I think that's one of my biggest regrets, not starting early. I started in 2019, I believe. Time's flown, but I would tell myself, first of all, to watch my YouTube video on investing, or I think there's great YouTube channels, like New Money is one of them I'll drop. Hamish Hodder is another one I'll drop. There's a lot of great YouTube channels that tell you exactly what to do when you know nothing about investing. I think just starting to just passively read, take a few months to understand things, and then start investing is the best thing you can do for your future self. Yeah.
That's good. I think two changes I made was one, when I used to watch YouTube while eating. It's common thing, you want to watch something while eating. Instead of clicking on like a random vlog or like a entertainment video, I just click on a financial video. So at least I'm learning something. I'm getting something of knowledge out of that video.
Yep.
And instead of sometimes I would still listen to music, but instead of listening to Spotify and just listening to the same songs over and over again, listen to an audiobook.
Yeah,
about finance.
Exactly. I think Audible, again, is one of the things that's changed my life, or even Spotify podcasts.
Yeah.
There's so many great ones. And I think one that I'll drop, there's a Young Investors podcast, which is those two channels that I mentioned, where they do, every week they talk about a new economic point, or what's happening in the markets, or what companies are doing well, etc. I think just immersing yourself in that field, even if you don't do finance or economics, really helps your financial literacy as well.
Fair enough. Talking about money, what is a good financial decision made and a bad financial decision made?
That I made?
Yeah.
I can tell you straight away what the bad financial decision was, right? So I went to LA 2019.
Yeah.
But I'm going again in a week.
Oh, very
22nd of December, going to the US for a month.
Yeah.
So it's my happiness kind of thing. But coming back to this, I went to LA, and in LA, obviously, people spend a lot of money on things.
Yes.
I went to, the sneaker place where Complex, the YouTube channel, does sneaker shopping. I went there. Okay. And I looked at the shoe at the very, very top. There was the Off-White Air Jordan shoes, which is like blue, beautiful,
blue and white,
flashy, not something you can wear every day at all, but beautiful looking. And I decided, let me get those shoes. It'll make me happy.
Yeah.
Got the shoes, very amazing, it cost thousands of dollars, and now it's just sitting on top of my computer monitor, just as an aesthetic piece. It's still, I don't regret it, because it taught me a lot about happiness, that this static, objects per se don't make you happy. And I think everyone has to experience that, where they purchase something they really like and realize this has not made me happy in the long term. I think the best financial decision I made was, again, starting investing, right? Putting money in an exchange traded fund and never looking back was probably one of the best things that I did for myself.
That's very insightful. How much did those shoes set you back?
It was about 1,800 USD.
Oh no!
Given currency conversion.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know why I did that.
I mean, you live in.
When you're in LA, you make bad decisions. But yeah.
How many times have you worn those shoes?
That's the thing. Since it's so expensive, you're scared to wear them often.
Yes.
But I've worn them maybe 5-6 times in my life since in the past 2 years.
That's crazy.
But now they're more
That's
just
really
an
good.
aesthetic piece.
Yeah. And you learn. So final thing is some lightning round questions that you're not familiar with.
Okay, let's give it a go. Let me just
Didn't include in the briefing.
Okay.
So just like one word or one sentence answers.
One word or
really.
sentence.
Just lightning, just
Okay.
off the top of your head.
Sure.
So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice, financial. You will never get wealthy renting your time for money.
Fair enough.
That's a financial piece of advice.
What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Worst advice I ever received. Hard work is success.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think what you work on and who you work with are also two other major pillars that contribute to success.
Fair enough. What's one thing you're trying to learn or develop right now?
Right now would be video editing.
Yep.
Would be amazing that I'm working on right now. Yeah.
Yep. What's one thing that you think other people value but you don't really value?
Cars, clothes.
Yep. Fair enough. Interesting. Yeah. And if you had to enact one law that everyone had to follow, what would it be?
A law as in?
Like any law that everyone had to follow, and you were responsible for making it. Like if you say yes, this is a law, everyone has to follow it.
A legal law.
Yes.
Oh. This is less a law, more a principle.
Yep.
But being as compassionate to others as you would be to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. No, that's great. You know.
Interesting lightning round. Put me on the spot there.
Look, that was amazing episode. Learned so much about.
I think I learned a lot from you guys with the questions you asked to force me to introspect on myself and, you know, what I like, what I want to do. So I think great questions, Vibe. And I'm looking forward to watching your other podcast episodes from other great people who've done really good things.
Yeah. Well, that concludes this episode of the Entrepreneurial Mindset. I want to thank you once again for coming on. You know, we found a good time. I didn't know you were heading off to LA.
Yeah.
Next week, basically.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So thanks for having me.
Thanks for finding time in your busy schedule.
For sure.
And yeah, so that wraps it. I'm Vabe, and
Prithvi.
Yes. And this concludes this episode of the Entrepreneurial Mindset.
Thanks, guys.